Do that now. And welcome everybody out to our weekly meeting. And last week we had a local water discussion, and we had talked about, can you survive on survival soup? And I kind of made a commitment that we would talk a little bit about water every week from now on, because it's as we kind of realized with what happened locally, if we didn't before, that water is the most important resource to keep us alive, and we should put more emphasis on it. So with that said, anybody want to add anything about local water or your water supply in case of a life-changing event at this time?
So I wasn't on the call last week, but we've got 55-gallon drums of water. I can't remember. We got 300, 350, 400 gallons of water stored. But then what I'm hoping to do is get the ability to draw water from our well when the power's out. That's really what I'm hoping for. So, we've got some water, but it's not enough to go long term.
Yeah, Sam Pruitt was kind of in the same boat. He talked about that last week. He was, how many days, Liz, did he say they were out of water from a hurricane?
Wasn't it a month? It was extensive. It was very long.
But
that they were out of water, running water.
They were in southern Virginia when a hurricane came through, and just took every standing tree down, and power lines were down for a long time. And so anyway, I think that's the kind of situation, who knows what could bring that on, but I think that's the kind of situation we should at least have as an insurance position in our minds. So anyway, so we talked a little bit about hand pumps and what their capabilities were, and we were going to try to individually do a little research. I did very little. I did check on because we weren't sure what the status on hand pumps were as far as how deep of standing water that they would go down to, and I did follow up on that, and seems like that down to about 200 foot is not a problem nowadays with the pumps that are out there. Of course, they're a lot more expensive than they were when I bought mine in '99, but anyway,
if that research is ongoing, I have some different options and notes that I've kept track of, but not yet purchased. I can send.
Okay. Yeah, I think we should definitely keep that thread alive. And I guess there's two ways of going about it. You could produce your own electricity and do it that way and not have to change anything in your well, or you could provide some kind of substitute for whether it be a well bucket or a hand pump or rainwater.
Well, and there's all sorts of other options too. I mean, like in California, we don't have it here, but we had an above ground pool. And even though it wasn't drinking water, we could do washing and toilet flushing and that type of thing with it. And we fully counted that as part of our water storage.
Right.
So.
I mean, basically, long term, unless you got a swimming pool, you probably can't store enough water, that you would need. So you got to either be able to purify other water that's around, like we have a little stream on our place that, 39 of the last 40 years, it's run all year. But even that, you might not want to depend on the way the weather's gone kind of crazy lately. But, anyway, I just think we should discuss this a little bit every time at least, and see what we can come up with by putting our heads together. So the other thing we talked about last week was survival soup, and, which is kind of just a conglomeration of basic long-term storage items that you make into a soup. And one of the drawbacks of it is it's real low in protein and real low in calories for somebody who was under stress or working a lot. So,
Well, the Tam had talked to me about this soup, and it sounds pretty nasty too. So I think we can do better in what
yeah,
we store that could help it be more nutritious and more palatable.
yeah, I certainly agree. Mhm.
But I mean, there's the term survival. If that's what you got, that's what you got. But I feel like we could store more to make that better.
Yeah, it kind of goes along with what the prophets have said, in that this is they recommend storing something that will keep you alive, but not necessarily keep you in the manner you're used to be accustomed to being in. Depends on where you want to go. I mean,
But most of us eat way too much as it is anyway. But you definitely want to have energy to be able to go ahead and tend to what the needs of your family and yourself are, though,
yeah.
your household.
I mean, in a life-changing event, you would probably need 3,000 calories a day or more. Hopefully you'd be doing things, not just sitting on the couch.
What?
I thought that's why you were going to have power so you could watch movies all day.
Yeah. So anyway, preparedness news. If you didn't notice today, the markets were up. They were really up. The Dow Jones set an all-time high. The S&P 500 set an all-time high for a few minutes, and then it dropped back considerably. But it was a triple top, and it did the same thing in 2008, by the way. Triple top right before bad things happened. And I think everything is waiting for the Fed meeting tomorrow at 2 o'clock, I believe. They widely believed to announce a 50 basis point rate cut, and Congress has been lobbying to make it 75. I suspect they won't do that, but they've got to kind of thread the needle. If they only gave 25, everybody'd be disappointed and the stock market would crash. If they gave 75, everybody would be worried about what the heck do they know that we don't know, and market would probably crash in that regard too. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see what happens at 2 o'clock tomorrow. I don't have enough conviction one way or the other to bet on that unknown. But seems like even when I get it right, the market reacts the opposite of what I would have thought they would sometimes. So, I'll
So
hold
we
that.
just bet on the opposite of what you say.
Sometimes.
Wondering.
Eventually I'll be right, but just like
It's kind of like a clock that's broken.
right.
Sometimes it's right.
At least twice a day.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's not a digital clock.
Yeah.
Okay, so my take on all that is you need to get massively diversified, but and of course, if not now, then when? The last few weeks were a gift. We can get diversified without taking a loss. So gold was up a little bit today at 25.72, and during the last 5 days, it's been over 2,600 a couple of times, but pulled back a little bit. Goldbacks broke out over $5. They were 508 today, so that's been a nice run. When we first started talking about them, they were 373, and I bought my first bunch of them at 378, so I'm pretty happy with that. Silver was flat today at around 30.70, and the gold silver ratio was the lowest it's been in a while. It was down to 84. We've talked about the Samsung solid state silver batteries before. Tilt and zeros were both down a little bit, well, less than $1 today. But that's kind of interesting with everybody expecting a rate cut tomorrow, that those would be down, because a rate cut should make those two long-term treasury ETFs go up. So another contradictory. Wheat was flat today at 518, so seems to be holding over $5. So any pullback on that to certainly below $5, but anywhere around $5, I would load up on that.
So I'm just interested, Winston. I hear you guys talk about this every week. Do you own all of these? Is that why we're tracking them? Because I don't. But I'm wondering, should I be? Is that what you're suggesting here? What's the concept?
Yeah, this would be my diversification plan for things that aren't necessarily correlated to the market, the stock market in general. Let's say this, a lot of people have the S&P 500 in some kind of ETF in some kind of IRA or 401k or whatever, and that's probably the majority of their investment savings.
Mm-hmm.
And so these are things that could be a good counterweight to if the S&P 500 goes down 40 or 60% or whatever. So like tilt and zeros is long-term treasuries, so they pay about a 3% dividend plus potential for capital gain if interest rates go down. So but certainly traditionally that's been what people have ran to in recessions and bad market times, is increase your content of bonds. I used to not see much use for them, but I've learned my lesson.
Well, the whole concept in bonds for me is the other side. If they like inflation and so forth, it's a good time to be in bonds. But if things are humming along and stocks are going great, bonds are stupid.
Yeah, and of course that implies that when that's going to change.
Yeah, well, that's the key for me. I don't I'm not watching this enough. Maybe you are, but to know when to try to time the market, to know, okay, I'm going to jump in now, or I'm going to try to short something, or take different positions that are going to help me as I move forward. The way I approach all of this is it's a diversification thing across multiple industries, and then just I let it sit. And but then I don't know if you're going to talk about it, but things like real estate or gold, real gold, or precious metals, or we've talked about crypto before, and all of those sorts of things are other hedges that I look at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. But I'll give you a little more insight on wheat. For example, this WEAT is a ETF that holds futures contracts in wheat, just wheat. And this one right below it, the PDBA, is a broadly based agricultural ETF. So they have soybeans and cocoa and all kinds of agricultural, including wheat, but it's better diversified. But wheat in particular, every recession and stock market drawdown that we've had, shortly thereafter, and this is one that you can buy after the fact, actually, I bought early. We have a pretty big underwater position right now, but anyway, wheat as far as I've got records back, wheat has gone up, 20 or 30% after a market crash. It's kind of interesting. And unlike gold, which sometimes does and sometimes doesn't, but although gold has gone up, usually when the market's crashing, it's all one market. People are selling bonds, they're selling gold, they're selling, crypto now, everything, because they're after liquidity, because most of the big boys in the world buy on margin. And so when the underlying asset starts going down double digits, they have to sell something, and maybe they can only get a bid on wheat and gold, because the others is going down like crazy. So they sell that to raise cash. So even though you pick the right asset, that after the crash is over, gold usually takes off pretty nicely, but during a crash, it's pretty much a race to the bottom for everything for a while. So except maybe bonds. So it's sort of bonds and cash. People say cash is trash, but I'd say this is a good time to raise cash also. And some of that should be in real folding money too. So anyway, the PDBA is an agricultural commodity based ETF, and the PDBC is a broad commodity based, which has a lot of energy and precious metals, as well as agricultural commodities. So very broadly based, and agriculture has been doing a lot better than the broadly based one so far, but we'll see. And the other contrarian investment is the industrial military complex, which in my opinion, biblically and all other things say that that's one we can count on as a good investment. And whether that's a good thing or bad thing, and whether you may have scruples about investing in it, it's going to happen. So, my point is usually, there are some things I won't buy, but this is one that like today, even though the market was up, so this was kind of interesting. XAR is an ETF that owns the top 14 defense contractors or defense companies. And some of those I also follow and everything that's in red there was down today. XAR, Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon, GE. Boeing, the dog of the group, was the only one that was up, and I think that's just because it's been beat down so much. It just happened to bounce a little bit today, but anyway, they're pretty much all down. So my comment on that when that happens is always, did world peace break out and I didn't know about it?
No.
So my take on it is today was a good day to stock up on some of these, and you're just going to buy one. XAR is the play to get diversity in one pick. U.S. oil was up today over $71, and I've been short that for quite a while now. And usually that's a good indication of inflation, recession, or war. And so it bounced back. It was last week, this time it was $67. So now it's 71, almost 72. And so it goes up a couple more dollars. I will initiate another short position, because I believe we're in or heading to a recession here, which would mean that oil would go down just from lack of demand. And another stock in that arena is a pipeline company called WES. They pay a 9% dividend, And it's 44% insider owned. I always like that. So they're not going to do themselves dirty. Actually, it was over $40 today, and the dividend rate was down to like 8.5, but because it's gone up so much. And of course, then there's Bitcoin, which got above 61,000 today for a while and then pull back. I'm short in that by buying BITI and still holding on that. And I'm also short Ethereum with buying ETHD. But that's right on the, both of those are right on the cusp of back to where I bought them. And tomorrow, the Fed announcement will probably tell which way Bitcoin and Ethereum is going to go.
Have you heard anything about XRP?
Yes.
It seems like they're talking both sides. Some people are saying, "Oh, it's going to drop like a rock," and others are saying, "Oh, it's going to go crazy."
I just happened to look at its chart today, and that chart looks pretty encouraging, I think. Probably to a certain extent matters what Bitcoin does, but Bitcoin's struggling right now. It's back up to a tipping point, which I think.
I think XRP has more to do with it. All of them are tied to what happens with Bitcoin, but XRP I think will either take off or do well if countries start to utilize the functionality for international trade. Right, that's where it's going to really take off. Banks and so forth start to use it.
Is that the blockchain that the BRICS are going to use, or do you know that? Or
I haven't heard that connection. It could be. That's an interesting one to think about. But I know like countries like Australia, so the Central Bank of Australia, I guess, is using it right now, and there's a few others, but it's not widely used. But because I don't know how much you know about it, but it was in a lawsuit here. The SEC was saying that it was a security, not a cryptocurrency, and that's pretty much been put to bed. But it hasn't had wide adoption yet, and there's a lot of discussion about the ecosystem they're building and how it's going to have all this DeFi components and jump on because it's going to be amazing. And you know how that hype goes with cryptocurrency, so it's hard to tell. But I've been seeing a lot, just me perusing the internet and YouTube about XRP taking off. But we'll see.
Yeah, I think it's I mean looking at the chart, its chart looks better than any of the other cryptos that I've looked at. So like I said, time will tell.
Yep.
So yeah. War news, we kind of already covered the Israeli pager thing, so won't beat that to death. So that's kind of the latest war news over there that looks, Hezbollah will strike back on this. So let's get on to more important things we can do something about. Seasonal information, fall is the best time to plant trees, so that might mean that you might need to order some. And of course, there's still some fall garden things that can be done. Cole crops can still be planted, a few of them, and of course, prime garlic planting season is about the 1st of November, so you got plenty of time on that. And it's a good time to plant cover crops, which we'll talk about a little bit later on. And it's time to harvest those sweet potatoes. Me and Mike will get around to that here one of these days. Our drop dead date is the first frost, by the way.
All right, so I can procrastinate a little longer.
So Bill, I don't know about you, but my bees are pretty sad this year.
Mine are doing amazing. In fact, I need to get on there, and I want to get into them. I haven't been into them a few weeks, but I want to get into them, just see if they're getting ready. for winter. I want to make sure they get a lot of bees and honey, and just get them beefed up for winter.
Yeah, most of mine are just surviving, and I noticed some of the strong ones were robbing the weak ones the other day. So
Yeah, I haven't been into mine, but they look good from the outside, so I'm hoping they're good on the inside.
well, pick them up behind, see how heavy they are, because I was kind of shocked at how light some of mine were.
Yeah, in reality, if they're that light, you should be feeding them, because we're running out of food for them to get stocked up for the winter, right? So, but I need to look. Yeah, maybe while Tam's gone, I'll jump out there and look.
Yeah. So anyway, the other thing I've been bringing up the last couple of weeks is might want to get a hunting license, whether you're going to hunt or not. It's a skill that kind of like gardening that or beekeeping that you can't just pick up in 1 year and expect to be successful at it. And having the tools to go hunting would also provide some home security. So you kill two birds with one stone. And if you've not had a hunting license before, you might have to take a hunter safety course to get one. So that might take some time out of your life. Might take a Saturday and Sunday out of your busy schedule.
Yeah, Raiden and I did it years ago, just one day. So I don't know what they're offering this year, but it was just a 1 day thing. So.
Okay. But anyway, those usually fill up this time of year. So, and of course, everybody ought to have some potassium iodine just in case somebody goes crazy. So now here's where we talk about any progress that anybody's made. I guess we've already talked about water progress that we may have or have not done. But anything else you would like to share with us?
I got squashes ahead,
Yeah,
and you had to carry them.
you got the biggest squash I've ever seen. Well,
We think one of a few of them might have weighed as much as 40 pounds.
Wow.
I say 50.
Wow.
And they were dense. Oh my word, they were dense.
What
They
kind of
had
squash are these?
Lunga de Napole.
So
L-U,
zucchini?
L-U, it's a, well, I don't know.
So lunga means
L-U-N-G-A, Lunga,
di
D-I,
Napoli. It's just,
N-A-P-O-L-I. Yeah.
yeah, it just means long from Naples. That's all that says.
Okay,
It's huge.
Huh.
There was one.
Zucchini? Is it zucchini? Is that what you're talking about?
No.
No, it's a orange squash on the inside.
Oh,
In fact, they were saying that these were sold. They would just, in the market, they would just cut off a section of it and sell you a section of it.
wow.
It literally, a few of them were so long and so curved that he put it up over his shoulder and it wrapped around from mid chest to on his back.
Or you can
And
make
it was,
or you can make an oxen yoke out of it.
Wow.
yeah.
So is this eating squash, or is this pig's food, or what are you growing it for?
Well, it's an eating squash. I got it at the auction. I got a bin of them, so they came on a pallet, and there were 27 of them in the pallet, on the pallet in the bin.
Mm-hmm.
They were that big that it only took 27 to fill it.
Wow.
And they're dense, all except for just a very small part at the where the bulb would be has got a little bit of seed in there. It is complete squash all the way. It's like a big, enormous green butternut squash.
That's amazing.
It was crazy.
Have you tried to eat it? How is it? Is it good?
Well, we had to use a shovel to break them apart in the field, the ones that we did feed. But we're going to have to probably get, I don't know, handsaw or what. I mean, the blade needs to be quite big, but we're going to have to just cut some of it off the next time we go feed, so that we can bring some into the house.
Yeah.
But they are enormous. I want to get more of them, but except it might kill us getting them in and out of the barn. Honestly, I could not get one of them up because of the angle that the truck is on. I was trying to wrestle it out of there. Finally, Winston had to get up in the back of the truck to lift them out. I just couldn't get a purchase on them by the time they got to the bottom of the bin.
Anyway,
But yes, they were bought for feed for the animals. I got them for $1.25 a piece.
but we will try some of them and report back, and we will save some seed from them.
Yeah. The score is if they're that cheap and they're good, yay, right?
Yeah.
Pigs are happy, you're happy.
And I suspect, time will tell, but I suspect they will be good keepers. So
Yeah.
at least till Christmas, probably beyond.
That's the good part about squash, right?
Yeah. So anything else? I've got a turkey story if nobody has anything else.
It's good.
You know how you take a turkey or a chicken and you cut their head off and they flop around like they got no head?
Yeah.
Well, I was down feeding the sheep, and the turkeys come, to investigate. And I've got this gang of 9, I call them. They were raised together in a pen, hatched them out, and they're getting, half to 3/4 grown at this point. Look like little Dinaraptors walking around. And one of them went through the electric fence, and I didn't see it until after it had gone through and was flopping on the ground. But I'm speculating that he stepped on the bottom grounded wire and then touched his head to the hot wire, and he's just flopping around like he'd cut his head off. And I go, what the heck is going on with this bird? And I went in and caught him and took him outside the pen, make sure the pigs didn't eat him, and bundled in his wings so he couldn't flop and everything. But it was pretty obvious that he was done for, stopped breathing. And so at that point I cut his head off, hoping he would bleed out, and not to waste his effort. And I skinned him later on and cooked him yesterday. And
I love the smell of a cooking turkey.
Well, and I have 2 pots of bone broth now from him.
Nice. So you canning them up? Is that what you do, or
Canning up the broth? Yeah.
Yeah, eating the meat and
Oh.
canning up the broth.
Yeah, we got about I'd say 5 or 6 pounds of boned out meat off of him.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty much filled up a gallon Ziploc bag. So anyway, that's my turkey story. Strange it might sound. So the other thing is, I had Liz go out and take this picture today because these are kind of popping up everywhere. I'm sure
Very sparse though.
sure everybody knows what that is, and it kind of gets a bad rap, and everybody thinks that causes allergies, but really doesn't. This pollen on here is so sticky and gummy that it doesn't really go anyplace unless a bee carries it or a pollinator. I haven't seen my bees really work it much, but a lot of the native bees I see all over it. This year the bees will probably work it because they don't have much else going on. But it's good for a lot of different things. And well, we got this picture up. I want to go ahead and play a video that talks about that. Sure. middle here so we don't have to.
That being said, we still have stuff to harvest and we still have stuff to make. And there's one plant that I have been super excited about
Video's not up.
a while now. And I think it's about time to harvest. So this, my friends, is goldenrod. Unfortunately, it sometimes gets a bad reputation this time of year because it gets confused with another plant called ragweed, which tends to cause a lot of these seasonal allergies. Now, goldenrod is probably one of my favorite plants to harvest, especially this time of year, specifically for allergies. You can harvest the aerial parts, leaves and flowers and stems, and you can use it as a tea. You can use it as a tincture. You can turn it into a salve and infuse it in an oil, which my mom and I did a few years ago. It ended up being a really beautiful, rich yellow salve that we ended up using a good bit of. But one of the things that I have also done with it in the past, and I'm excited to be able to share it with you guys, is harvest the aerial parts, leaves and flowers, and infuse it in some of our raw honey. Now, I only harvest what I need, mainly because it is one of the last good nectar sources for our honeybees. Granted, there's so much that grow all over our property. And as I can see right now, it looks like I've got a little native bee. Sorry, girl. I don't know if you just saw that, but she just came over and flew to pollinate and to help get some of this nectar. You're gonna be a good little bumblebee. But I don't harvest too much of it, but what I do end up using it for specifically is for the seasonal allergies. Now, if you tend to get nasty seasonal allergies like I used to, I used to get allergies so bad that I would get sinus infections until I started keeping honeybees and eating our own raw honey. And if you are not a beekeeper and you are suffering from seasonal allergies, the one thing I would absolutely say is do find a local beekeeper in your area, mainly with the plants that are all blooming, and make sure the honey is raw. If you go to the store and you get store-bought honey for your allergies, yes, that might help a little bit, but your local source is probably the best. And I always have people ask, how do you find out if there are local beekeepers in your area? The first thing I would do is go to your local extensions office where your community is, check and see what type of bee clubs are in that area. Also, put it out there. And if there aren't any local beekeepers in your area, maybe it's time to become one. Well, friends, this is actually the next day. Apparently I had some technical difficulties with my camera and I could not finish this video, but we can finish it right now. So these are the goldenrod, the aerial parts that I harvested yesterday. I did let them dry just a little bit. I actually washed them and let them dry. You didn't get to see that on the actual footage, which, it is kind of what it is. And of course, we're going to have technical difficulty. Okay, all right, I'll be right back. Okay. All right, let's try this again. What I did is took the aerial parts of the goldenrod, which is basically anything from the stem, the leaves, and the flower in general, the aerial parts. And I'm breaking it up and I'm going to put it in this mason jar. We're going to infuse some goldenrod in some of our raw honey. Now I've got some here. It's absolutely delicious. I have a few buckets behind me as well that I keep in my kitchen because that's how we roll. But The goal is honey is another way to be able to extract out the medicinal phytochemicals of the actual herb. So what makes the herb medicinal is what you actually want to extract out. Now you could use alcohol, same thing, do 1 part of your plant matter to 2 parts of your alcohol. You could do the same thing with apple cider vinegar. I'm using honey. You can also use a vegetable grade, food grade glycerin. Not the biggest fan of it, but I will use it if I have to. But why when I have honey? Now honey loves water, so it will actually like absorb the water from the plant matter. Too much, you're going to have a little bit of an issue potentially, where you could actually kind of ferment it. And how you would check that is, you know, use a refractometer to check the moisture content to make sure that it's not higher than 18-20%. If it were, you know, add a little bit more honey. And one thing I really love about goldenrod is it is actually a lovely herb for seasonal allergies. So this time of year, I tend to get a little bit of a tickle. My throat kind of starts feeling a little bit scratchy. And I do use a lot of honey, but even that sometimes, like I take honey every single day, just like I would a multivitamin first thing in the morning on an empty stomach. This is my favorite thing. But why not actually combine the health benefits of what raw honey has to offer with the health benefits of goldenrod? Now, goldenrod is lovely for allergies. It's also a great anti-inflammatory. So if I have, you know, any type of like soreness, you know, when you get that really kind of like nasty sinus infection where you're just like, oh my gosh, all that pressure, this is a lovely plant for it. So I'm filling the jar. I'm not packing it. That's the big thing. You don't necessarily want to pack it, but you do want to fill it a good bit for a good close-up of the honey. Now, granted, if I need a little bit more, I do have like a couple buckets right beside me that we can use to fill this up. But again, you can use vodka, you can use apple cider vinegar, you can use the glycerin. I like honey, and actually, I might take this and set this one up as in a vodka to make a tincture. And then what I'll do is after I strain it, I will combine both the vodka infused goldenrod with the honey infused goldenrod to make it a little bit sweeter. You can absolutely do that. Once the menstruum, whatever you're using, once it pulls out the medicinal properties, you're good. You could absolutely combine the two. But I'll tell you what, this was so helpful for me when I had a complete and total sore throat. Because of the anti-inflammatory properties and the fact that it is very astringent as well, it's really good if you have any type of like laryngitis, sore throat. It also has antimicrobial properties, not just because of the honey, but also because of the goldenrod that you're adding into it. But what I love about honey and goldenrod together, they're both vulnerary herbs, which basically means that they are going to help mend the soreness, mend the tissues. All right, now you see the problem that we have here, okay? This is why you don't want to pack all of those herbs down, because you want everything to kind of ooze down. Now I'm gonna have to get a wooden chopstick, or I might just let it settle for a second and let the bubbles do what the bubbles are gonna do. But you wanna be able to make sure that all of your honey is then mixed in really good with all of the herb. But while we're here, while it's doing its thing, and while you're watching it, it's kind of like a lava lamp. I don't get out much often. Okay, so other things I love about goldenrod
essentially, yes, great for sore throats, wonderful for the antimicrobial properties, but it will help with congestion, whether it's like in your sinus or if it's like kind of upper respiratory. What it does is it's known to help thin out a lot of that mucus that tends to kind of settle a little bit. I don't know if this angle is good. Hold on. Take two. As this is still kind of like infusing, I'm gonna have to find a wooden chopstick, or I will use a butter knife because it's stainless steel. I know a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, don't use metal with your honey. Yes, that is true, but stainless steel is not reactive. So don't worry about that. Every beekeeper I know uses stainless steel when they're extracting honey. It does not react with the honey because the honey's pH. We'll get into that, I think, on another day. But while this is kind of still bubbling down, I will share a little bit more about goldenrod and, of course, the honey. Now, I have found that not only has this remedy been great for sinus infections, helping with the congestion, seasonal allergies, scratchy throat, I have also found that the anti-inflammatory and antimicrobial properties that the goldenrod has is also beneficial if you're experiencing like a urinary tract infection. The reason why, okay, because this is where it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna kind of break this down. One, it's astringent, okay? So astringent means that it is kind of like drying a little bit. Two, you have the anti-inflammatory. So any membrane that might be inflamed is gonna calm it down. It's gonna help take out some of that inflammation. So your tissue that you have, you know, in your throat, those mucosal membranes are fairly similar to your internal mucous membranes. So whatever tends to be very soothing for your throat also tends to be very soothing for your urinary system. So yes, anti-inflammatory, antimicrobial, astringent, all of it. So great for in and great for out. The other thing too, obviously honey, adding honey to it. I mean, you're just, especially with raw honey, you are making a powerhouse of a product that is combining the goodness of both. I found a chopstick. So how you will make sure that you actually get all of the bubbles out, you're going to, let's see if I can get a little bit closer. Okay, you're gonna take your chopstick or your butter knife, especially if it's stainless steel, and you're just gonna kind of move it around, get all of that ooey gooey, and again, my honey is cold. I did not make things easy on myself, guys, but you know what? This is real life. While this sits for a couple of weeks, you could do, 4 to 6 weeks. I've seen some people do it a little bit sooner. Sometimes I like to add a little bit of warmth with my herbs that are infusing with raw honey. Now when I say warmth, I'm not saying I'm cooking it, okay? I'm saying I'm gonna put a lid on it, I'm gonna put it in a brown paper bag, and I'm gonna set it in my greenhouse. Or if you don't have a greenhouse, you can take this jar, seal it up, same thing, put it in a brown paper bag, and you can actually put it in your vehicle, especially on like the warmer days. I know there's gonna be some people who are gonna say, oh my gosh, you're gonna heat honey up. That means it's gonna kill all of the goodness, all of the prebiotics that are in raw honey to make it what it is. Well, I would say that if you're heating it up to around 95 degrees, then you're not actually going to break down the medicinal goodness that honey has to offer. And the reason why is because you go into a colony, it is roughly 95 degrees. So if the bees are heating up, keeping their colony nice and hot, I think we're gonna be okay. Anything hotter than that, yeah, I can understand that, but just take it, seal it, put it in a brown paper bag. The reason why I'm using a brown paper bag is so that the sunlight does not break down the plant's medicinal properties. I will take this and I'll kind of tip it
every day, at least once a day. Or if I'm driving around in my car, I'm already shaking it up. Okay, so we're killing two birds with one stone. But you want to be able to move it around mainly so that the honey.
Okay. Did you know that much about goldenrod? I did not. Good medicinal. Can y'all hear me now? Hello?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay. So anyway, goldenrod's good for a lot of different things, and you can use it a lot of different ways. I mean, she didn't cover on this one, but you can just cut the heads off and brew a tea with it, and pour some honey over it to sweeten it up a little bit, and drink it and get all the benefits of it. Or you can run it through your freeze dryer, and then it will keep for a long, long time and have it available for the future. So make a tincture out of it, make a honey, whatever you would call it. And it's good for a lot of different things. So if I can get back on the track here, let's see. Yeah, what am I on? Zoom went to. There it is. Okay. There. Okay, let's go through this one right quick. 2 cheap methods to build soil in your garden.
It is mid-November, and I am full into my Persephone period. Less than 10 hours of daylight, nothing really growing. And I have put the garden to bed for the winter. I thought I would talk about what is lurking under all of those leaves for anybody else that wants to build their soil over the winter. Okay, the sad thing is these beds don't have to be empty. There's a ton I could be growing in winter, even, yes, in Michigan. I'll do a video on that next time. But I just didn't get my winter garden in time. There's just too much going on this year. I figured as long as the beds are empty, I would take advantage of that downtime to build the soil. And if anybody else would like to do the same, this is cheap. The only thing you need is time. If your beds are empty over the winter, it's a great time to do it. So 2 techniques. First, the main technique. This is a classic fall cover crop in this bed of field peas, oats, and down below, some hairy vetch. Why these crops? Peas and hairy vetch both are in the legume family, and they fix nitrogen out of the atmosphere, move it to their roots, and make it available to other plants. When you terminate the cover crop, all of that nitrogen stays in the soil and helps build that supply for next year's crops. Oats put down a large fibrous root system, and when they die back and their roots are left in the ground, you get a lot of organic content from it. Plus, they help to aerate the soil and create these little pockets for oxygen as they degrade. You can see my high-tech tool here, 2x2 scrap piece with rope tied to both ends that I use as a handle while stepping in the middle of that scrap piece. To show you this process, I started from the edges, just tucking all the extra material inside the bed so it would be where I wanted it. And then I used my tool to flatten everything down. View from above, You can see these are really small steps, and I'm just stepping directly on the stick as I work my way down. The reason you do the small steps, showing it from the side, is that they will shingle together as you go and create kind of a nice dense mat across the entire surface of the bed. And you do want to step pretty hard to really snap the plants off right at the base of the soil as you go. I worked my way all the way down the bed, and you'll see when I got about 3 feet from the end, I turned around and went the other direction. That was so that material would shingle inside the bed, and it does require a little care where those two come together. I then went back a second time and did the entire bed one more pass just to make sure it was all super, super flat. To give you a sense of what the crimping does, here is a bed before, and here's this bed after being crimped. The next step was to lay down leaves. You can see I'm taking extra care to tuck it in along the edges and get that cover crop well contained underneath. And I'm working in sort of the direction of the grain. I'll do a still image here. You can see the cover crop's laid down, and I'm dragging the leaves from one end to the other to help encourage that. I did need 2 full packed down bags of leaves in order to cover the bed. You want to make sure you get a really thick layer of leaves on top of this to help terminate that cover crop. This is a very deep layer of leaves. I'd say it's probably 7 or 8 inches deep. And if you look at the finished bed and think about what's going on down there, the cover crop has been shingled flat. That creates a little pocket of air above the soil, right where the plant was laid down. Then you've got the leaves sitting on top of that. That's another insulating layer. And once my snow comes and lands on top, the snow itself has pretty good insulating properties. It's pretty fluffy. All of that means that the soil, way down beneath all of that nice, lovely comforter that we've put on top of it, is staying pretty warm. And because the soil is staying fairly warm, relatively speaking, this is Michigan, but it won't freeze solid. And that allows the recomposers, the worms, all of the other fun invertebrates down there to take all of this organic content that I've added to the soil in the form of the cover crop roots and help break it down quickly. That would happen much more slowly if I allowed everything to freeze solid. That's kind of the main technique. But then I have another area of the garden all the way there in the back, those back 2 beds. And when we put in the garden, we started the compost at the front, and then our contractor sort of pushed it towards the back. I tried to spread it as best I could, but those beds in the back have pretty thin soil. They just didn't get the topsoil or compost that I wanted them to get. I used a different technique back there to really bulk up and add a ton of soil to those beds. And instead of just planting a mix of peas, oats, and hairy vetch, back here I used a blend that also contained daikon radish seeds. Here are the beds in the back that had daikon radish added to the mix. The radish did a couple of things. One was that these leaves, as they came up, created nice microclimates that helped everything else sprout. So I got a really good cover crop back here. But the main advantage of the daikon radish are their huge taproots that they send down deep into the soil. Here's one that I pulled out of the ground earlier. Let's see the root size on this. This wasn't even fully mature. And here's one still in place. Kind of zoom in down here. You can see that root driving way down into the soil. And these guys are no joke. They really break up the soil and add a whole bunch of content to it. Instead of starting by crimping this, I started by weed whacking it with a string trimmer. I'll get into why in a minute, but I went through and I used a regular old string trimmer to cut this down, and I saved the material as I went. You can kind of tell from the spray here, but this was crazy messy. Good times. Guessing this is a familiar sight to anyone that's ever done any real amount of string trimming. As you can see, this doesn't take cover crop all the way down to bare soil. There's still, I don't know, a couple inches here of material at the level of the soil. After weed whacking, I needed to collect all of that debris, and I went around and raked it up and compiled it for my next step. I gathered up a lot of our leaves into a pile, and I used that board laid on top to stomp them down and flatten it. This was about, I would say, 9-10 inches high before I flattened it. Now it's about 4 to 6 inches. I took all of that fresh green material and laid it down on top of the leaves. Stomped it flat. One more time. From here, my husband / life partner in crime ran over the whole thing for me with our lawnmower to get it all chopped up and give me a nice mix of browns and greens for a compost mix. And I applied that on top of the bed, mixed in with that stubble. and I let it settle into place, and over time it nicely drifted down and worked its way against the top of the soil. After that, you could see the cover crop standing up here on the left. I went through and crimped it, and you can see that here, sort of lower right. Laid it flat just like I'd done on the other bed, but now I'm trapping that compost mix beneath it. And then I covered the whole thing with a layer of leaves just like the other beds, and ultimately got a nice finished product. Not gonna lie, that was a total pain. I really don't want to do it again if I don't have to, but I am anticipating that the combination of the roots decomposing in the soil, all of that extra compost mix that was down at the base, and then the remaining cover crop debris being shingled over top of that, plus the leaves on top, is a massive layer of material that hopefully will bulk up the soil and add a bunch of depth and a bunch of organic content very quickly. But if your soil is in pretty good shape and you're doing this as more of just kind of a best practice, method one, way easier. A quick note on covers. You can see this one behind me. When you put the leaves on, you will need something to help anchor it in place and hold it down until eventually your fall rains, your winter snows weigh these things down and they mat themselves in place. You're going to want to hold them down with something just to keep them from blowing away and ruining all of your hard work. If you were doing this in the summer, so you wouldn't have fall leaves, but let's say you had a cover crop that you put down after your spring stuff and you wanted to quickly kill it off and put down your fall plants, you would need to use a black tarp. You would need to have it over the cover crop remains and getting hot underneath, absolutely no light. Everything will kill off quickly. You can tell I have used a porous cover over these beds. Light gets through it, but more importantly, rain and snow will get through it, and they will thoroughly saturate the mix of cover crop debris and leaves, really wet it down, help it break down, and create a nice bank of water from which my spring crops can start drawing when I put them in. If I had a black tarp over it, I wouldn't get that same benefit. Also, for me, having a few little survivors in there that don't get reliably killed off through this process, as far as the cover crop goes, is fine. Some living roots in my soil over the winter are a good thing. They will help to maintain the soil life. They will help get those microherds nice and happy. And come spring, I don't have to plant these right away. I've probably got until March. If I find after the snow melts that there's some surviving cover crop in there, I can put a black tarp down then and thoroughly kill everything before I have to plant into it in the spring. That's it for this one. I hope you all actually have winter gardens going, unlike me. But if you do have empty beds, I hope that this tip is helpful for how you can use them over the winter to help build up your soil and get a healthier, stronger, and happier crop next year.
Okay. That was pretty amazing garden, I thought. Kind of like what I wish mine looked like, but never does. I didn't see a weed in the middle any place.
Well, I'm calling all my weeds cover crop. That's what I
Same here. So the daikon radishes, I couldn't tell. When would she have planted those?
I would. She said, didn't she say this was like middle of November? I think. So I would say probably August.
And it was interesting for me how similar the daikon radishes were to dandelions.
Yeah, it's true. They do look similar, and they'll get a lot bigger than the one she pulled up too. I've had them that were, they went down to the, my concrete block beds are too high, and they went back down and stuck in the hardware cloth down below. So they were at least 18 inches long. So, they will get nice and large, and of course, if all else fails, you can eat them. Make a good ferment.
So is it too late to plant?
No, I don't think so.
Daikon?
No.
Okay.
And I was really surprised that, her being in Michigan, that she was going through all this work, because in my opinion, in Michigan, it would seem like all of this cover crop she's planting should kill, winter kill out. But then
I think her point though was she was making this blanket that she was laying down, to try to help let the soil, thrive during the winter, worms and whatever, and keep it kind of warm down there.
Yeah.
You know, which again, that means all I need to do is go out in my garden and push it all down with a 2x4, and then wait for the leaves to fall and put that on top, and I'm good.
You got plenty of cover crop already, huh?
That's right.
Yeah. Something to be said for that. I got enough pokeberries out there. We talked about berries being good for arthritis and some other stuff last week, but I've got enough pokeberries to supply the county right now. Need to get those out of there before they go to seed and make more pokeberries, pokeweeds. So anyway, go ahead and